Welcome to Phido International, and in this particular episode we're going to be calling it Phido Africa. Africa because we just came back from a trip to Africa, Nigeria in particular, and I have so much I want to share, so much experience. I was away for 2 months. Spent all that time just going around so many places, and so there's so much I have to share with you, and this is just one of the series of my experience of visiting Nigeria in particular, Africa in general. And so my name is Phido, and welcome on board. So what's the title of today's episode? Since it's going to be a series, it's about calling all Africans in diaspora. That's what I want to say, calling all Africans in diaspora. Because I am an African and I am in diaspora. And my experience so far of these trips has given me something to share with the rest of my fellow Africans in diaspora. So this is a review of my experience, this 2-month trip that I went for. Now the interesting thing is, it's not like this is the first time I'm going to Nigeria since I relocated or came over to live in England. No, I've been frequenting. I practically go every year. But this is the first time I've actually stayed for this long, 2 months. And so I had to see things from a different perspective. You know, like when you just visit a place, you stay for 2 weeks, which most holidays are like. 2 weeks, 10 days, and you rush out of town, you have an impression, and you go, wow, either you liked it or you didn't like it. But this time, I took my time, and I relaxed, and I felt at home, and I participated in everything. And so I have friends all over the world who are just curious to know how I found it, what kind of experiences I went through. And please, could you share with us? Could you tell us what you experienced? Could you tell us how it went? Because we're curious, we want to take a trip like this, but we don't know how to go about it. So I decided, just the typical me, to do a video to share my experience so everyone can just get to hear it at the same time. So everyone who knows me know how much I am in love with Africa, in love with Nigeria, in love with my roots. That's what I love to call it. I'm in love with my roots because there's so much it has to offer. But the unfortunate thing is, it's been presented in a very negative way and branded so wrongly, such that I see my fellow Africans across the world have a negative attitude to their roots. And that bothers me so much. And this is one of the reasons I took it upon myself. Again, like I know I do most times, I'm usually ready to sacrifice, to gain knowledge, to gain experience. So I left my family for 2 whole months, and I have a young son of 10 years old, and everyone was curious, how are they coping? Of course they were with their dad who's looking after them, but of course typically children want to be able to chat with their mom and get on with life, but luckily we have the WhatsApp that helps to make life easy for people to communicate with each other. And so yes, I could communicate with my kids, but a typical mom knows what it's like to be away from children for so long. But I took it on. I took it on because I wanted to take away this negativity from my roots. I want to see my roots in the light it's meant to be. And that's why I wanted to see for myself. I wanted to be relaxed and settled in, to see things clearly without having anyone give me information that wasn't real. And what I'm saying, anyone, I live in the West, and there's so much negative from the Western media, you know. the typical media here, anything that happens is over projected. It's given a new light. Something that may be so small that sometimes it's so weird that even people in Nigeria, for instance, where I come from, may not even be hearing a particular news that's going on in the Western world, but this news is broadcasted all over the Western world, and everyone then comes up with a negative information about Africa. It's so interesting that people who want to travel home are so scared of traveling. Why? Because there's this news that said something is going on, and are you sure you want to go take that on? Because that's the kind of thing I was getting from people. You sure you want to go to Africa? There's so much going on. Are you going to be safe? There's a lot happening. And so when you keep hearing things like this, people are scared. I mean, it was Ebola, and then you hear there's so much HIV going on, and then you hear Boko Haram, and then you hear now cattle rearers, and then of course the usual terrorism going on everywhere. And so it's always overblown in the Western media. And if you keep listening to this type of news, you're never ever going to think of going home. You're going to blank out your roots. I don't want that. And I felt it's important. I say things for myself because I have children, and I don't want my children growing up without roots. And that's why I'm calling this Calling All Africans in Diaspora. We cannot afford to allow our children to grow up without roots. I don't know anyone who's out there who will be happy to say, I don't come from anywhere. And so for the sake of our children's future, it's important that we give them a root. And this is one of the reasons I took this on. So while we were still talking about me traveling and trying to get to the roots, to my roots, it became a matter of survival. Now, I live in England, and we have a big thing going on now. We're at the point where United Kingdom is trying to decide if it wants to be in the EU or not in the EU. And you listen to the news, and you hear this debate going on everywhere, and it's so deep-rooted in the sense of people want a sense of national pride. People relate to history, and they feel they're losing it. They're losing connection with their roots, and so national pride, national integrity, a lot of issues come to the surface, and people start questioning. And that's the kind of feeling I have with my roots, where this is where I was born, this is where I was brought up, and suddenly all I'm getting is all negative from the mainstream media. And it makes you wonder, you have to start questioning. I was watching a BBC program the other day, and this documentary was focused on the United States. And it's about, I think it was in Texas and Dallas, and it's about what's going on with the police and the blacks, and this issue about Black Lives Matter. And you see how people are being threatened, to the point that I saw a man going to school with his kids, and he had to hold a gun with him to go to school. And these are little kids watching daddy with a gun. And it suddenly hits you. This is about racial survival, in the sense of everybody is trying to outdo the other. Because then I start to question, why the negative news about Africa? Why is it that nothing good comes out of there as far as the mainstream media is concerned? And so when you start dealing with things like this, then you start to wonder what's going on. I mean, there's a lot of political issues going on out there in the world, but this is about where you were born and brought up. And so that national integrity, the pride of what you know and what you grew up with, starts to query what's going on, and it affects the way you feel. And so I had to do a bit of research, and I'm looking at it. Now, look at Europe, and Europe is about 50 countries with about 742 million people population-wise. And Africa is about 50 countries as well, 53 I noticed. They gave reasons why they think it's for 53. And it's about 1.1 billion people. And the United States is about 318 million people with about 50 states. And so you're wondering, why would these other parts of the world want to destroy this other one? Because when you really look deep down into Africa, yes, there's a lot of tension everywhere. But why is that? I mean, if you bother to buy newspapers, and when you want to really get into it, you're going to find so many reasons, so many things going on underneath, which I sometimes just choose not to get involved with. But when you're not looking at all that deep-rooted issues and you want to be like the next normal human being, because that's the way I look at it. I always feel if other human beings are living there, then I'm sure people are not just being picked on the streets and being killed, which is the message we get. And so I take it on and I tell myself I have to go and deal with this. But the question I have for us Africans, because this program, or this particular episode of the series of episodes I'm going to be dealing with Africa, is purely meant for Africans and meant for maybe people married to Africans. This is a continent that is so well blessed. I didn't want to even go into researching how blessed Africa is, because that's going to come. But today's focus was just about giving you a bit of insight about my experience in Nigeria and about why we need to not listen and allow ourselves to be distracted or taken away from our roots because we are listening to this mainstream media, which there's so many things I read these days, and some of it is telling me clearly that it is not in our interest that these things are done. It is done deliberately to distract us, and we'll get to that. So question I want to ask us, because I say us being me and you Africans, what are we running away from in our continent? And what are we running to in the Western world? Because I've had to deal with people in the past where I will explain. I've lived here for nearly 23 years now, and I have my experience. Trust me, it's going to be a book, the amount of experience I have. And I say to people that I know, it's okay to get on the plane and take a trip, take a visit, have fun, be a tourist. But to pack your bag and say, I am going over to live there, I wouldn't recommend it. And then people look at me like, okay, there she is, she lives there, she's having an amazing life, and then she doesn't want us to go. She's wicked. And so it got to a point I stopped saying anything. I don't get involved with people anymore. I just leave you to have your experience. And this is clearly my attitude now, including my young kids. When I say something, they don't listen. I say, okay, baby, go try it out. And so you try it out and it burns your finger, you learn from it. Because most times, like a client of mine said, the mom told her, he said, if I don't teach you, life will teach you. And so if you don't want to listen to your parents, you don't want to listen to people who've been through something before you, life will teach you, and that's what they call experience. And so I say to people, there's no need rushing and packing everything you have and say, I'm going to go have so much fun out there. So questions I have is, are we lacking comfort? So we want to rush to the West because we want comfort. We're seeking comfort. We're worrying about security back home, which I thought was one of the biggest reasons. We need employment. We're looking for a better life. And interestingly enough, I did a video once where I was trying to explain another issue, and someone actually sent me a message and being extremely rude to me and was like, you should be grateful you're in the West. And I said, okay, what's the reason? Because there's constant electricity, there's good roads, and there's water. You cannot complain. And I said, okay. At this rate, you and I don't have anything to talk about anymore, because if your focus on life is about electricity and water and good roads, then you've lost me. We're not on the same page. That's not what I look for in life. I'm not seeking those things. So if that's what we're running to, we're looking for electricity, we're looking for good roads, we're looking for constant supply of, I don't know, then should we sabotage the future of our own continent for that? Should we put our children through the same stress we are going through now for the rest of their life, and their own children and their own children? I see a trend going on here, and this is why I feel it's important we should address it, because it just reminds me of that story in the Bible when, was it Joseph, was sold by his brothers to go to Egypt, and eventually all the Israelites had to go to Egypt, obviously due to the famine and all of that. And then it became a big issue for them to leave Egypt. God had to intervene. And so if we allow this to continue, what sort of future do we see for our children? Another type of slavery? But we still need to look at this. So again, questions and questions. Are you getting a better quality of life living in the West? And then if a better quality of life is what you are seeking, what is a better quality of life? That's a question you should ask yourself. What makes a better quality of life? So just like we mentioned earlier, is it the electricity? Is it the good roads? Is it the water, constant supply of water? Or is it the freedom to think? Now this is where I come in. Do you have that freedom to be yourself sitting in the West? Do you find that sometimes you're mentally blocked, or what I prefer to call spiritual slavery? And now I say these things because this is what I find out my 2 months of being in Nigeria. When I happen to get there, my spirit is alive, because suddenly I feel so empowered. I feel I'm in the midst of my own. I feel I can dream, I can do different things. And you know why that is the case? Because this is a green land. Green in the sense that those of us here in the West, those of us, the diasporas in the West, we've seen so much. We have so much ideas of what business should be, because you know I do business. And so we've researched, we've dealt with business, we've tried to run a business, and we're trying so hard to make things work. And you know what stops us? The system. And I have a big issue with that. So the system holds you down here and holds you down here, and you hear all types of stories. Health and safety here, this is security issue, this is this, you can be sued for that, you cannot be sued for that. And so a million things stand on your way. And so you may have the best ideas to grow something. and suddenly every law under the sun comes and holds you down. But you go into a system like Africa where everything is still green, and so you can dream and have ideas of what you can bring on board that could be different, that could be interesting. And you look around your people and you find they have need for this and they have need for that, and you could be the person providing the answer to that need. And so I had to take my time to understand what's going on here. Here in the West, the system is already built. It's at the point where what else could you add to it? What's your new idea that could stand out, that could be different, that nobody's done before? And most times when I sit down and I go on the internet and I'm looking at what people are trying to do, especially if you're on Facebook, you see people constantly trying to sell to you e-marketing, come to this conference, go onto this website, and there's a free workshop going on, and so everything's going on. But you go back to Africa and none of this is happening, because people are still green. They have no idea how to start something new, how to go about doing anything. So this gives you an opportunity to be the one initiating something like this. So if you find yourself struggling to make ends meet right now in the West, I wouldn't encourage you to keep sitting down doing nothing and hoping that it's going to all go away in no time. Why would I be in that position to say this? When I started years back, World of Braiding, with the dream to empower people with a skill that they could run their own business. Again, before that happened, I lost my city job, working in the typical system, and I lost everything. I've told that story on this channel several times. I lost everything, including the home, everything. And I felt at this point, I thought I was rock bottom. But grace of God, lots of ideas in my head directed me, start something with your hands. And so I went on different courses and empowered my hands with so many skills. And then I was excited, because there I was with 3 kids, trying to feed them. Imagine looking for a job under that situation. I mean, you couldn't take your daughter to doctor for any issue, because then your boss is wondering why is she not at work, and I'm tired of hearing this story. My daughter's ill, my son's ill. So once you have kids, it is a nightmare to set up anything here, working with some organization. And so lots of mothers struggle with this, and so they end up sitting at home, unemployed, feeling sad for themselves, feeling sorry. That's not how it's supposed to be. And so when it hit me to employ myself, empower my hands, employ myself, I did that. And I felt good. So I thought, yes, I have to share this with everyone, because that's me. I love to share what I know. And so we set up the training academy, and we started trying to empower everyone we knew, especially women with the skill. Over the years, we've done that. But of course, the more we're dealing with these women, the more soft stories we're hearing. I would have loved to train, but I haven't got the money, and my husband is unemployed, and my brother is this. And so we hear all the stories. And that made me think, why? Because you live in a system that's allowed your brain to be clouded. You're not thinking anymore. That's what I call the spiritual slavery. You cannot think. And you know the worst part? The bills start to arrive. I mean, you don't want to hear this. I was in Nigeria for 2 months and I didn't receive one bill. But you leave your home for 2 days and you try to open the door to come back. The bills have mounted up. And so the more bills that are coming through the door, the less happy you become. Depression comes in. So you start getting sad. And with my personal development understanding, the more sad you get, the more unhappy you become, the less ability to think straight. You can't think anymore, because the spirit that allows you to think is a happy spirit. When you're in a happy place, good things come to you. When you're in a sad place, bad things come. And so that's the way it is. So that's why you notice that when people start to spiral down, they go further down. And so if you find yourself in that state, how do you pull yourself out? And that's the system we live in. So my question is it working for you living in the West? Because if it isn't, and you got so much ideas in your head of things you could be doing, Africa is the place to go. Go and spread your wings. There's so much ideas that you have in your head. You've seen it all. You've been in this system. You found out things that's possible. You could be the person initiating the idea where you come from. I mean, this has always been there with me. I say this to all my students when they come to learn, and I want to know where you're from. And I say, you know what? Once you finish this, go home and start this up. Go and set up something. Because we just talked about the population. You're dealing with 1 billion people. 1.1 billion. Depends on what part of the, of Africa you're from. Nigeria, for instance, where I come from, we're dealing with 170 something million people, and just Lagos State alone, you're looking at 23 million people, which is bigger than some states, some countries. So whatever you are dreaming of, as long as it's something that's solving a problem, you're going to have clients, and you're going to be able to grow something. But of course, we're going to have, you remember we say it's going to be a series. There's going to be a time when I'm going to sit down with you and explain what it's like to survive in Africa. So depending on your personal experience of living in the West, of living in Africa, there's so much you have that you can bring on board. And that's why I am saying to every African out there, this is the time to start dreaming of going back home. Because when we started, and I said it's about national integrity, it's about pride of your history. This is our generation. And as people who have seen it all, in the sense of we're here now, there's so much opportunity out there. We've experienced things. We see how things are branded. I mean, what was so exciting for me? Remember I said about Africa being green and the West being saturated. Another way I looked at it was the West is more man-made, while Africa is still God-made. Why would I say that? Because I'm sitting there. Yes, we have all the issues, the electricity issue, the water issue, and the good road. But while you may be looking at them and calling them a problem, you can also look at them and call them an opportunity. Because opportunity means there's an issue, and so you turn around and give answers to it. So if you go to the market to buy foodstuff, you just buy just a little bit, because you are not guaranteed of electricity, and so you don't want to buy so much because it's all going to be wasted. And so where does God-made come into this? You just eat fresh. And that's what I found is so exciting, because nothing was stale. When I needed something, I just go to the market, and the good thing is, see it as good or bad, there's market everywhere. So you don't have to drive miles to go and get something from the supermarket. And I was watching a program today, and someone was complaining, we're still talking about the EU issue, about how EU dictates how a fruit should look like. A banana should be straight, a carrot should be straight, and so seriously, you live here and you find in the supermarket all the food look the same. it has to be visually appealing. But you go to Africa and you just see the food as raw as it was brought from the farm. And so you're just dealing with nature. So that's nature. Man has not come in there to instruct how a banana should look like. And so if you have to deal with nature, that's your body still working with nature. There's no chemicals or synthesized things going into your body. And so you see some people in these parts of the world bloating out of proportion, because it's like everything you're eating is so chemically maneuvered or manufactured or altered. And that's not what you see in Africa. I mean, for people who were, following me on Facebook, because I was throwing out images every day of whatever it was I was dealing with. And the exciting part was, while I was in Nigeria this time, it was mango season. Now in Africa there are seasons. There's season for this fruit and season for that fruit and that food, and so you just walk around it. So you know what's in season and you eat that. And mango was in season, and you should see the amount of mango you get for less than, for us in the UK, 20p. 20p, 50p. You cannot finish this mango. And I decided, I'm not just going to be chewing the mango, I'm going to make mango juice out of it, which I did. And it was amazing. Now that's nature at work. You're not even going to dream of trying to drink mango juice here, because it will not be mango in it. I actually saw a drink once, and it was, I can't remember what it was called, ginger beer. And I took my time to read the ingredients, because I'm into nutrition now. It's one of my passion to see that what we eat is natural and healthy for us. And so I'm reading the ingredients on this ginger beer, and there was not one ginger in it. How do you lie to the public like that? Ginger beer without ginger in it, all chemical. And so that's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. And so when you're in the West or in Africa and you see food that's straight from the farm, you feel at one with nature. And these are opportunities for you to go and turn these things around and see how you can make it, preserve it. We're not saying add chemicals, but there are ways you can play around this. Like I did the mango juice. All you have to do is bottle it, instead of them just throwing the mango all over the place. So these are opportunities. There's so much opportunity for all of us who have been here, experienced it all, to start dreaming of what we can do to improve our land. Because all these negative names we allow these people to give to us, it's so unhealthy for our children. I mean, my daughter is in school, and every time she comes in, she's telling me, Mommy, they mentioned this topic, and this is how people were just looking at me and they were sniggering and laughing. Do you know what that does to their psyche? That means their future is already being messed around with, because they're suddenly beginning to feel out of place, feeling inferior. That's not what I want for my children. That's not what I want for my grandchildren. That's not what I want for my future. And so Africa needs you to come and work on it, to come and make those changes. One thing we should know is no one out there is going to come and make those changes for us. It has to be us. We have to come and make our continent what we are running to. Because remember the question, what are we running to? So we're running away because there's no electricity and there's no water and there's no good roads. So can we not go back there and fix those things, so that our children could have a place they can call home without feeling inferior or out of place? So these are some of the issues I want you to take your time and look at. Okay, so we're looking at a continent that has everything. It has so much. The natural resources, subsequent videos I'm going to go a bit more into detail about the type of foods we're talking about, the type of natural resources we're talking about. We're talking about, fruit trees, we're talking about root crops, we're talking about minerals, we're talking about things like gold, like copper, like you name it. It's endless how rich Africa is, and we all know it. There's no pretending about this. Everyone knows how rich Africa is, but we still turn around because that's what suits this other people who just love the negativity about Africa, and then they latch on to the negatives in the sense of Africa is so poor, and I never can deal with that. Why would you say someone who has so much be so poor? And then the other day, very interestingly, the Prime Minister of UK turns around and says Nigerians are so fantastically corrupt. Interestingly, because what I found very interesting was the fact that here in the UK we have this law of handling stolen goods. You're not meant to buy stolen goods from someone who's stolen something and come and sell to you. Stay away from such a person, because if you do, you're equally a criminal. And England banks or British banks are happy to take money from the Nigerians who steal money from the country and go and put it in their banks. And then you turn around and you laugh and say they are corrupt. So who is the corrupt one? Of course, both parties are corrupt. And my question is, if you never gave them a safe haven to bring this loot to come and hide with you, would they be looking for where to go and hide money? Okay, maybe another country will be happy to deal with it, but this is just one example. So they're quite happy taking from the poor. That's the way I see it. These poor people that we send aid to. Programs here, children in need, and it's always about Africa. Look at this poor African child has nowhere to drink water. Look at the dirty water the poor African child drinks. And yet that's the same country or continent that has so much. But a few hands are happy to steal all the wealth and bring to the Western banks. And the Western banks are happy to accept the money and then sit back and relax and then throw a few coins at us and say, we're giving you aids. And then, of course, a few of them again turn around and take the same aids and bring it back again in the form of looting again. And so this corruption just goes on and on, all parties involved. But for us in Diaspora, we have a lot we can contribute. We understand how to create businesses. We know how to brand. And there's a market, huge market, 1 billion people. So we have a lot we can do to support our people, pull our people out of this scenario that they've been put into. I did a video, went to a village where we were watching local women, create a fabric called adire. And we put the video up, and some of the questions we got was, oh, it's not enough to just highlight this and let us see that this is how it's done. How about you come and organize that they do this fabrics quicker and they don't go through so much strenuous process, because it was quite strenuous. And I replied this person and said, okay, I've highlighted this. Somebody can take that on. Okay, so I said, I've highlighted this issue, and the whole idea is to bring it out in the open and let anybody who has ability to invest in this process and wants to support these women and do different things with them, let them take it on. Because I was happy to bring out the issue to the open. And so that's what I keep doing. Wherever I find something that needs to be brought out to the open, I'm happy to do it. But what I did find interesting is, while we might sit here and be saying there's issues with electricity and water and all of that, Nigeria in particular, you actually do find a divide. There's the extremely rich and then there's the extremely poor. So while you may be hanging in the diaspora and thinking, wow, I don't want to go back there, everyone is struggling and suffering and there's so much poverty and everything, you will be in shock when you do visit Nigeria, for instance, that people are having a swell time. I mean, the homes I saw in places like Abuja and Kaduna and Port Harcourt are out of this world. I mean, you cannot look. I in particular, I don't know about anybody else. I am not having a comfortable life living here compared to these people that I saw. And for most of us, it's all about the image. I'm living in US and I live in England and I live in Europe. And so you struggle and suffer while people that you may be looking down on are actually having such a great life. My point is, it's about life. I mean, something I talk about all the time we're here on this earth is limited. And so if your dream about life is to come here and suffer for as long as, and then the next day you know, people hear that one is dead, then you wasted your whole life. So this is the time to wake up from that slumber where you thought, oh, I live in England and I'm having such a great life and I don't want to go home because everybody's suffering. You got it all wrong. People there are having a great time. The number of cars I see parked in some homes are out of this world. So if you have any inkling of what's going on, you'll be thinking twice to say to yourself, people are suffering. Yes, there are the people suffering. These are the people that you could be going there to help by creating businesses that will help them to create jobs for them and you know solve problems that are being faced by these people. But the people who are having fun, they are having so much fun that when you see these people, you'll be questioning yourself, what am I actually doing in the West? So that's a point I wanted to bring across. So when you go into a system in Africa, you are going to a system where people will appreciate the new innovation that you are going to be bringing in. And while you're sitting here, your innovation cannot be better than the one that's already been seen. Because, like I said, the system is full. And so, we're looking at man-made things. So man decides, no, that's the law. The law says don't do it this way. The law says, while in Africa, people are hungry for knowledge. People want you to guide them on how to do things. So I needed to bring out all this information for you to know so you're not sitting there ignorant. And the next point we're going to be bringing up in the next one, we'll be dealing with how I actually felt within the system. And so just keep your eyes peeled to this because there's quite a lot I want to share. But of course, if with what we've talked about, you feel inspired and you feel excited, you want to chat with someone, we are here. We'll be happy to sit with you, chat with you, consult with you. Email us info@worldofbraiding.com and feel free to WhatsApp us. We'll put the number in the description box below. Facebook, World of Braiding, Join Phido. Join Phido is absolutely fine. I have another page I call World Travels and Tours, which I put quite a lot of images from Nigeria. So feel free, go and see that page, World Travels and Tours. And I put so much images of things I saw in Nigeria. And so we're here, we're ready to support people on this journey because it's going to be a really long journey. A really long journey. So much to talk about, so much to share, so much for you to start dreaming about and doing to create for yourself a better life. So thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next episode.